welcome back. Welcome back. I do think that it is amazing that the year is starting again, which is also a little bit scary. But it is Rosh Chodesh. We've just passed Rosh Chodesh Elul, and 5th of Elul. And I think that the most important thing that we all have to remind ourselves on bettering ourselves and to continue to inspire ourselves to do things and to work on being a Kiddush Hashem. And these are the things that we're actually here doing. And I'm just going to share a little thing that happened this morning at the airport. And it was, I was going with no luggage and I landed up with 2 big suitcases. And there was a pretty secular family that were with next to me. And they clearly did not have enough weight. And when they told the guy, they said to him, look, he's 10 kilos. They're 10 kilos between them overweight. And he had weighed them all up. And I said, hang on a second. Because I had to buy the suitcase, I had to buy that, give it to them. And this guy looked at me as if like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? And I said, listen, and I said to this man behind the counter, I said, we're all one family. And he kind of like, the guy smiled, but he didn't think it was really that funny. But then somebody else standing next in line heard me make this offer, and I couldn't, because I couldn't accept the luggage. It had to be part of that luggage. And then he said, hang on a minute, I'll take your bag for you, and it will just be registered with my ticket, because I have a 10-kilo bag that I'm not using. And when we were just before boarding, this man actually came up and he said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just thought, we are an incredible nation, but we have to remind ourselves, and we have to let down all the barriers. And when we do something without even thinking, I'm going to change somebody or influence somebody's thoughts, can you imagine? The man actually offered and took his bag. And I thought, you know what? That's who we are. So we're very special and we're blessed. In the country, and after nearly 2 hours drive back from the airport, I love this place so much that you could never leave it. And we all should feel like it. So Chava, this is the time that we are starting again and going in. And it's such an honor to have you here as our first speaker of our new year. And as always, since just be a big zechus for your mom, and for all of Klal Yisrael. And as if anybody noticed, we have all the different places of where we can sponsor. And isn't it nice? One of the sponsorships of tonight is for a breast that was yesterday or the day before. I can't remember what day. So Chava, I'm passing on to you now. And just in case you didn't notice, I'm on Cynthia's iPad. And instead of saying hi, Mom, in Israel, in Yerushalayim, she's right here in the kitchen with me.
So nice. Thank you very much, Joanne. And thank you very much to all the people who've joined today, because it's still August, so it's still, the truth is the weather is making us feel very much like it's going into the winter. And first of all, thank you to Joanne, who carries on despite everything, whether she's here or whether she's not here. Indefatigable. Thank you so much for all your inspiration, and how when you see something happen, you see what's going on around you and you say to yourself, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to help that person in whatever way I can. And please God, Hashem should continue to help you making a difference for people's lives and helping in whatever way you can. And may your organization go from strength to strength. And a big mazel tov to baby Chaim Yitzchak, Asor, and Zikla. I hope I'm saying the right names. And really, we should really be focusing our minds on it. It's Elul, but I still thought we can still get in with talking about this week's Parshas HaShavua, and that is Parshas Shoftim. And rather than talking about Shoftim v'Shotrim, that we should set up guards, I'm going to talk about one pasuk in Parshas Shoftim and focus in on one little thing, and I'm going to talk about the symbiotic relationship between people and trees, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. So in Shoftim, in the context of going to war, The Torah discusses who has to go to fight and who's disqualified. Someone, for example, who's got their mind somewhere else, like if they've just got married or if they've just planted a vineyard or if they've just built a home, they are disqualified in inverted commas. They have a reason why they shouldn't go to war. But everybody else has to go to war, which is obviously, unfortunately, we are nearly 2 years in. I mean, obviously, since Israel's been created, we've been at war, but I mean, the number's creeping up to 700, and it's just horrific to think that our hostages are still there in the tunnels. And I'm hoping that by the time we finish the class today, and the merit of our learning and the merit of all the chusim that people are doing, that the hostages will be released. That is our fervent hope, and that the war will be over, and things will be better for the soldiers, and all the soldiers who are ill should recover, and all the hostages should be brought home, and Am Yisrael should be able to live in peace. We are hoping that will be the case. So we're now just, I'm actually going to do screen sharing. Just give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, I actually put a link in the chat to, I actually put a link in the chat. So if anybody, I'm not monitoring the chat, but if anybody wants to download the handout, yeah, Joanne, can you see this? Can you see them? Can you see the handout? Yeah? Yeah, okay, fantastic. Okay. So in this week's parsha, which is in the book of Devarim, which is like in the summer holidays, we don't really like get to learn so much about it. So we learn about what happens, the rules of war, what one has to do at the time of war. So in Devarim, Kaf, Yud, and Kaf, it says in source 1, Ki sosor el ir yomim rabim. If you're going to go to you're going to be a war against a city many days, which basically means a long time. Okay, lehilachem aleha. Lo sashchis es eitza lindoch olav garzen ki mimenu sochel. You must not destroy trees in the area, even if you're at war, so even how much more so when you're not at war. Don't cut them down by swinging an axe against them. Ki mimenu sochel, because you will eat from it. Not only you'll eat from it, but the people who live there. So it's one thing if you're at war, but you don't go and destroy the food and the sustenance for the people near you. And then we have this sentence that also lo sichros, and you shall not cut it down, you shouldn't destroy it. This is the words I'd like to focus on that are highlighted here. Actually, I think I can make this a bit bigger, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Ki ha'odom eitz hasodeh. Now this is very difficult to translate. We know what the words ki, maybe people know odom is man, eitz is tree, sodeh is field. What does that mean? How are we supposed to translate that? Are we supposed to say something like, for is man a tree of the field, or for man is a tree of the field? What does that mean? Okay, then it carries on, says, Rak eitz asher teda ki lo eitz ma'achol hu oso sashchis. For only a tree which you know is not fruit-bearing, you may destroy and cut down. There's lots of halachas that come out of there, but before we do that, just want to talk about what the Mefarshim say on this. Rashi translates that, ki ha'odom eitz hasodeh, translates it as rhetorical. You can attack enemy soldiers, right? But a tree is not a soldier. So is a tree a man? Is a man a tree? So therefore, it's not a soldier. There, that's what Rashi's basically, do not attack him. Do not attack the tree. And the Ibn Ezra says, Ki chayai ben odom hu eitz hasodeh, because a man's life depends on trees. Now, I'm not going into the whole thing about photosynthesis, but the fact is, we breathe in oxygen, and the plants breathe, and we breathe out carbon dioxide, and the plants, whoever's into biology, then you know things about photosynthesis, that basically, if we didn't have trees, we wouldn't be able to breathe very well. So that's very important. So that's just a side issue, but I'm not going to go that way. Just a separate issue. Human beings need trees for food, survival. We also can use the wood to build houses and fire and create things like that. It's part of the, in inverted commas, the ecology and the food chain. So maybe the best way to translate ki ha'odom eitz hasodeh is, for a man is the tree of a field, where maybe we should translate that rather as, we depend on trees for survival. Man's destiny is closely intertwined with a larger ecological reality. If a man destroys a tree, if a human being destroys a tree, in a sense, he is destroying a part of himself. Now, the Rambam, Maimonides, lived 800 years ago. In his famous book, the Mishnah Torah, he writes in Hilchos Melachim, which is actually Melachim, and it's also about wars and kings. He says, and this is source 2 on your sheet, okay? Ein kotzitsin iloni ma'achol shechutz lamedina ve'ein mo'nim mehem amas hamayim kedei sheyivshu. Fruit bearing, this is halacha, and it is actually halacha l'maaseh. Fruit bearing trees should not be cut down outside the city. We don't block up the irrigation, causing the trees to dry up. For anyone who cuts down a tree, this is what the Rambam says, receives lashes. So it's a punishment. It's like an avera. This is not only at the time of a siege, okay? Aval, one second. It's not only a time of siege, but anyone who chops down a fruit-bearing tree for destructive purposes receives lashes. A tree can be cut down if it's damaging other trees, or if it's damaging somebody else's property, or because perhaps you've got an orchard and you need it you're cutting it down for a purpose of, like, it's more valuable to use it for housing or for fire or something like that. You can't just you can't do wanton destruction. So it says, Lo osra Torah elo derech hashchosa, like bal tashchis. One cannot just take something in the world and just destroy it. So imagine you had, I don't know, even a pair of tights. You can't just take a pair of tights and just rip them apart. It's just destruction. You mustn't do wanton destruction, but even 100% more so for fruit trees, because trees are our life. We work in harmony. We have a symbiotic relationship with trees. We're going to speak about that a little bit later on in more details. But actually, halacha l'maaseh is that if, for example, you had a fruit tree in your garden, you shouldn't cut it down. And if there's a reason why you have to, imagine it was disturbing the ground or something like that, or if it was disturbing someone else's property and the roots were destroying somebody's, that's a different issue. But really, people do not cut fruit-bearing trees. So much so, when it came to building the Mishkan, if you look at source 3 on the sheet, in Shemos Kafov, Va'asisa es hakaroshim la Mishkan, atzei shittim omdim. When Hashem commanded Bnei Israel to build the Mishkan, where they were told to use atzei shittim. Now, what is special about atzei shittim? We're not exactly sure what it is, but we call it acacia wood. And look what the Medrash in source 4, the Medrash in Shemos Rabbah says, She'im yivakesh adam livnos beiso me'ilon ose peros. If a human being wants to build a house out of trees that are fruit-bearing, say to them, Omaro, say to him, Uma melech malchei hamlachim sha'akol shelo, Hashem, the Almighty, the King of Kings, everything is His. Kashe'omar la'asos Mishkan, when he told Bnei Israel to build a Mishkan, Amar lo sovi ela me'ilon she'ena oser peros. In the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan, we were not allowed to use fruit-bearing trees to build. That's so fascinating that Hashem owns the world, everything in the world is His, but nevertheless, what the Medrash trying to tell us is that it's so important not to shoot yourself in the foot by using something that is trees that Hashem has given us, the trees in the world. We should use them and don't cut them out. So then the end of the Medrash says, Atem al achas kama v'kama. If Hashem didn't use fruit-bearing trees for His home, tabernacle, the Mishkan, even how much more so, we shouldn't use fruit-bearing trees unless we absolutely have to cut them down. And the Sefer HaChinuch tells us that the root of this commandment is well known in order for us to teach ourselves to love good and benefit and cling to it. I'm going to get to source 5 in a second. We have to try our best not to have in our nature to destroy things, especially for no reason. And this is the correct way to live, and it's the way the people who love peace and are happy. And it makes me think a little bit sad. I remember when Israel gave Gush Katif back, and they had those beautiful greenhouses where they made all the beautiful lettuces and they grew loads of fruits and vegetables and things like that. And when the people who took over Gush Katif went in, they just literally ransacked the place. Instead of using the infrastructure and the irrigation that Israel had put there, they said, no, we don't want anything. And they just ruined all the hard work that was put in. I'm just going to carry on with the Sefer HaChinuch, and he says in Mitzvah 529, the Sefer HaChinuch was, it's a bit of, we're not 100% sure who wrote it, like an anonymous author, but we don't exactly know. He lived around 13th century Spain. He sort of codified the 613 mitzvahs, and he says this mitzvah is not to cut down a tree, not to waste intentionally. But he says, "Lo ya'abdu afilu gir shel chardal." You shouldn't even destroy a mustard seed. Okay, nothing. Don't do any wanton destruction. We would be distressed by any loss and destruction that we see, and if we can prevent any destruction, we will do anything we can to prevent destruction. Fascinating. And then we have a quote from Rabbeinu Bachaye, and he's called Bachaye ben Asher. He's a Spanish commentator. He died in 1340, and he says, the commentators of blessed memory explain, why is it that we say Ki ha'adam eitz hasodeh? Because man's life and sustenance is from the tree of the field, and it's not the way of a wise and understanding nation to needlessly destroy, sorry, that's a little bit before, to needlessly destroy something so worthy. And this is the quote that I've put on the sheet here from this posuk. Therefore, you shouldn't spend energy cutting down a tree of the field, rather you should protect it. That's a whole new level. One I'm saying is don't cut it down. Now he's the Rabbeinu Bachaye saying we have to protect it from damage. We have to protect trees, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Where did he get this idea from to protect trees? Going back to the Garden of Eden, Bereshis, Perek Beis, chapter 2 in Genesis. Vayikach Hashem Elokim es ha'adam. Hashem took man, vayanichehu began Eden, and he placed him in the Garden of Eden. La'ovda u'l'shamra. There's a lot more to say about this. Maybe one year I'll give a talk about Tu B'Shvat and I'll speak more about trees. But Hashem put man in the world, and he says, what was the first commandment? The first commandment was, here's the world, here are trees, eat from all the trees. And then it was, don't eat from the tree of knowledge, good and evil. But Hashem put us in the garden, Hashem put man in the garden, humankind in the garden, la'ovda, to work it. We have to work the field, to remember everything. We have to have rain from Hashem, we have to work the field, u'l'shamra, and to guard it. We have to guard it. And I think this is the most poignant quote from the late Chief Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sacks. He wrote a book called Faith in the Future, and in 1997 he says, man is not only the master, but also the guardian of nature. This is perhaps the best short definition of the ecological imperative as Judaism understands it. A guardian is entrusted with property that does not belong to him. His task is to take charge of it and eventually return it to its owner intact. We are put in this world, la'ovda u'l'shamra, to work the land, but to guard it. We are guardians of Hashem's world. It's not up to us to go around and do wanton destruction. Everything in the world exists in a perfect balance. And I remember once I went to hear this talk from somebody who was a scientist who said, like, the sun is a certain distance from the earth. If it would be any closer to the earth, we would be heated up and melted. And if we'd be any further away, we would be too cold and we wouldn't be able to live like that. Now, I just think this is so fascinating because this was written, well, we're going to look at source 9 in a second, was written by Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who passed away in 1888. He was the German Orthodox rabbi who founded the Torah im Derech Eretz, contemporary Orthodox Judaism. And he says the following, and this is source 9, okay? There's a bit before, and then there'll be the quote that we've got there, okay? Hashem called forth his world into existence in 10 stages. He created an abundance of forces, intermingled and functioning closely together, according to his word. And then he separated them so that each had to sustain the other. None was henceforth able to exist and function itself, but it had to be sustained by its fellow creatures, and in turn had to help them exist and function. In this way, everything contributes according to its strength, however much or little, to the existence of the whole, And if it destroys a fellow creature, it robs itself what it needs for its own existence. Now, I want to tell you, about a year ago, I went to the Natural History Museum, and I went with a little girl, and the guy was giving a presentation, and he was speaking about sharks and things like that. And he was like, well, it's really good if we, like, you might say to yourself, well, we don't want sharks, so we'll get rid of sharks. But what would happen if you don't have sharks? Because sharks are the natural predator of, I don't know what, some other fish. And he basically said, if you get rid of sharks, let's say you make sharks extinct, you're going to cause a problem down the food chain, because if there aren't natural predators for whatever it is the shark eats, and going down the chain, then the whole ecosystem wouldn't work. And I just think that the world is, I know that in Israel, they had a problem with cats. They had a problem with rats and mice, so they brought in cats. And that solves one problem, but created another problem. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Israel and they've seen millions of cats. It's because the cats were brought in to deal with the mice and rats problem. But we've got now a cats problem, but never mind. The world exists in an ecosystem and everything's interrelated. Today, it's like what I call like a modernische Sachen. It's like a newish thing. Greenpeace, for example, we're all very conscious about offsetting carbon footprints, or we're worried about greenhouse gases and ozone layer. But if you think about it, Greenpeace has only been founded like 54 years ago. It's founded in the 1970s, or so even Extinction Rebellion, if people know what that is, although that probably people don't like that so much because they're always doing protests. It's only 2018. So, but look, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch wrote it in 1888, bringing back to the Pasuk of the Torah, La'avdo L'Shomra. We have to be the guardians of the world. Now, I was teaching in another context about trees, and one of the people there was in university, and she told me this most amazing thing. She said that trees are in fact like the lungs of the earth. I don't know if you can see this picture. I'm just going to try and put can you see my pointer? There's a picture. On the right-hand side, you've got a tree, and on the right-hand side, you've got half of a set of lungs. And she told me, and this is written up in a academic paper at University of California, Agriculture and Natural Resources, if you want to look it up. She said, without plants in general, and trees specifically, we would not have oxygen. Trees function as the lungs of the earth, and it's so interesting because it has a very similar fractal structure. Trees release oxygen when they use energy, and from the sunshine to make glucose and carbon dioxide and water. It takes 6 molecules of CO2 to produce 1 molecule of glucose by photosynthesis, and 6 molecules of oxygen are released as a byproduct. It's literally like perfect. Forests are essential to life, yet we take them for granted. And we know there's been things like reforestation projects and things like that where we try and make up for the things we ruin. But basically, it's literally like they are the breathing lungs of the earth. I just think it's fascinating. Just gonna write things down. Okay, now I found something else out, and I think this is absolutely incredible how unbelievably in parallel and in tandem we live in the world, and how I just thinking to myself, like, who remembers like the images of when it was COVID and then we were in our houses and then you saw.
Can I just interfere for 1 second?
Yeah.
When you're telling that about the trees, a number of years ago, we actually cut down, and it's very expensive to take down trees, but we took down some trees in our backyard. And it was a very strange thing, but that might say Shabbos. It was in the middle of the winter. I was actually, one of the times I went to get my nails done. And I was sitting, drying my nails and staring up at this very beautiful, incredible National Geographic program. And then the woman actually takes out a stethoscope for trees. And she puts it to her and she puts the sound, and you can actually, and this was before Tu B'Shvat, and she's talking about the sap coming up at this time of year. So everything was so incredible. And then she was talking about the CO2 and everything and how the world works. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and I just took away these trees. It's kind of like, well, we just take it so much for granted, and you just brought I just want to just tell you because you just brought so much to life within that little thing, and those lungs and the pictures and everything, just stunning. Sorry, I just had to interfere.
Thank you. I want everybody who wants to contribute. I'm happy for everybody to say whatever they want. It's like that's what makes it, you know, more interesting. I just thought to myself, like when it was COVID, remember at the beginning of COVID, when everyone was in their houses for a very long time, and then you saw these images of like ducks walking in the street, and like maybe we've cut down the natural habitat for some of the places, and you know, and they would really come out, and I don't know, maybe we ruined it. I know that we try in the park across the road, they've left like a little bit like for wildlife, you know. I don't know. I think we like,
You know, when
maybe
they
we're
cut
encroaching
into
in nature,
Harnoff,
we've taken it.
when they cut into the mountains in Harnoff, they disturbed a lot of the little mouse homes and things. And people used to say they're getting someone to open up a cupboard and there was a little mouse. And it wasn't just about a rat infestation, it was that they'd actually carved into the mountains and we had displaced so many of the natural habitats.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, listen to this amazing story that somebody brought to my attention. Like this is absolutely fantastic. Okay, this is a story. If you want to look it up, it's in the National Geographic. Actually, Joanne, you mentioned that, not National Geographic. It's this year. Staggering story. Okay, in the Czech Republic, they wanted to build a dam, and they spent years on it, and there was like loads of bureaucracy, and you had to go to the planning committee and this and that. They wanted to build a dam. It cost about $1 million, and they were about to do it and it didn't all go through, and there was a whole argument about it. Anyway, in the middle of their like planning stages, like after a week, somebody noticed that 8 beavers had come and built a dam. Okay, so you have to read this story. It's just so fascinating. I just think to myself, beavers can do things with wood and like do things that the world needed. They needed a dam in that area. They obviously didn't get employed to do it, but they just built it there. I'm just like, wow, the world is so incredible. It's just like take things for granted. The beavers know how to do it, and they don't need a whole planning committee, and they don't need to spend £1 million. I just think that's just the most amazing story. So look it up if you want to. I put the link on the chat, but if you want to look it up, if you look up National Geographic, it's this year, 2025. The guy who wrote the article is February the 7th. If you want to look it up, the guy's name is Jason Bittel, Bittel. It's fascinating, just as a side point about how cool nature is. Okay, and I also want to think about how the world works together. And I know, for example, I have to admit it, sorry, I have got a fly swatter in my house, like a not a mosquito thing, it's like a fly thing. It's like got a little bit of UV light, and if a fly dares go in my kitchen, God forbid. I know, because I'm telling you that the Sefer HaChinuch says don't destroy things wantonly. Well, I just leave it there. And if the fly flies towards it, then I'm so sorry, that's your tough luck, because I don't want you in my kitchen, type of thing. So I think to myself, like, we don't really want bees in our lives, but the fact is, it's become more evident that bees are really essential for life because, bees are essential for life. We know that it's so important, orchards and bees and pollination, that we had the whole problem with there's not enough honey because there's not enough bees. Bees are so important. So I read this article, it's not another academic article, which talks about why bees are critical for achieving sustainable development. Sorry, just 1 second. Oh, my little picture of my beaver is squashing this writing. Let's get rid of that. Okay. The reduction in global bee population are threatening the pollination benefits to both the planet and the people. Whilst the contribution of bee pollination in promoting sustainable development goals through food security and biodiversity is widely acknowledged, a range of other benefits provided by bees has yet to be fully recognized. So we really like nature, trees, bees, flowers. It's all part of Hashem's master plan in the world. It's so interesting. And I think to myself, there are so many things in the world we've in my lifetime, we know a little bit more about biodiversity and about things like that, but there are loads of different things. We recognize the benefits of reforestation, but I think to myself, even any other miraculous things, it's only since 1954 was the first time somebody did a kidney transplant. Think about it, something that's in my body, or someone who died or about to die, can save someone else's life, or like a heart transplant since 1967. It's just incredible. They're now doing, since 2010, face transplants or cornea transplants. And I just think that to myself, it's just absolutely incredible. The medical advances in science is just incredible. And I just all this wisdom within the world. And I even think just a blood transfusion. Unfortunately, my father wasn't so when he had a blood transfusion. Somebody else gave their blood in the blood bank. That's just a little advert for if someone can try and donate blood. But you could just my blood could save someone else's life. It's just mind-boggling. We're all in harmony. The world is in harmony. Someone who has like bone marrow transplant or something, that somebody could be a donor and save someone else's life. I just think it's incredible. Now, I think that the Jewish community is sort of catching on a little bit to this. And for example, there's a lot of talk about eco shawls. Like, for example, some shawls, they don't want to have plastics. They've got a dishwasher and they like having real plates and things like that. It's a lot more work for the shawl, probably much more expensive, but they just don't want to be able to waste. And we have, for a very long time in the land of Israel, we've had the JNF and the KKL about planting trees. I know, for example, my grandparents, I mean, unfortunately, they both passed away a long time ago, but they had, when we were born, they paid to plant trees in a forest in Israel. And every time one of our grandchildren or great-grandchildren were born, they put another 100 trees up because we recognize it's so important.
We used to get a book with a stamp. And each time they used to get to things, you used to put a stamp in your book.
One day I'm going to try and go to the forest and see the forest that my grandparents, obviously there's a lot of trees. If each time someone had a baby, then they paid for 100 trees. Then I found the most fascinating, this is like full of really incredible stories, and I'm going to come together hopefully with some fantastic inspiration at the end, is a story about a man whose name was Ben Sion Israeli. And he emigrated to Israel in the second Aliyah, and he was a pioneer, and he was one of the founders of Kibbutz Kinneret. And he came from Iraq. He died in 1954. He came from Iraq, and he smuggled, at the cost of his own life, dates from Iraq. And he's one of the people who helped Israel, because when we thought to ourselves, what's Israel going to do? And it had to be the right type of environment. He at the risk of his own life, he gave the land of Israel dates where they have loads of incredible dates. Now, what's so incredible about this story is that I read about a year ago, because I'd already heard this story a while ago, that Iraq has now had a little bit of a problem with their weather, and they've had droughts, and they have not been able to produce as many dates as they want. You can look all this stuff up, do a bit of Googling after how it is that it's like Israel's going strong, they've worked out the irrigation, and okay, they did a little sort of steal Iraqis were not so happy that they stole their palm dates, but he did do that, and he really liked to try and help the farmers and to make there to be an economy in the land of Israel. So today we are thinking so much about the future generations, not just ourselves, because I want to steal all the fruit and eat all the fruit, but then if I do that, there won't be trees for the next generations. There was in fact a story in the Talmud already. Let me just see. Just roll it up. A story in the Talmud.
Did you see the question about the correlation between?
No, I can't look at everything at the same time, so I'm trying to do that screen. Yeah, tell me what the question is. By all means, read it out.
Miss Fine, I wanted to say hello in New York. Asked if there's a correlation between the trees are in the field and the king is in the field.
Oh, lovely. I love that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Wow. Wow. See, if someone makes a comment, you really enrich it. So we're now in the month of Elul, and the king is in the field. Hashem is there. He's right with us. I thank you so much, Miss Fine, for sharing that with us. He's right there. He's right with us. We're at a time where he's right there. And I heard someone say he's not dressed up in his regalia. He's just any old guy. He's reachable, and he's right there. So look at that. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I didn't think of it. Brilliant. I should have thought of it myself. Okay, so what I was saying is that today we're speaking about our obligations. We're talking about Greenpeace and reforestation and all the eco shawls and things like that. But the stories were written already in the Talmud about planting trees and the importance of planting trees. And here we have this incredible story, which is a story of a man whose name is Honi Hamagel. he was known as Choni the circle drawer, and he sort of like challenged Hashem, said, I am going to stand in this little circle, and if you don't make it rain, I'm not getting out the circle. He sort of challenged Hashem to when there was no rain and there was a drought. Here comes the story. He's a bit like the Rip Van Winkle type of character in the Tanakh, in the Talmud. So one day, well, to source 14, it's Gemara, Talmud, Bavli, Tanis 23. One day, Honi was journeying on the road and he saw a man planting a carob tree. He said to him, Hi, Ad Kama Shanin Ta'an. How long does it take for this carob tree to bear fruit? Amale, the man replied, Ad Shivim Shanin. It's going to take about 70 years. Not sure that carob trees do take 70 years to bear fruit, but there are trees that do take a long time to bear fruit. But he said 70 years. So then Chani says to the man, well, what are you talking about? How do you know that you're going to stay alive to be able to benefit from the carob tree? You're never going to eat the fruit from this tree. And the man said to him, when I came into this world, there were already existing carob trees that my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, they planted trees for there to be trees for me in this world. And they knew they would never live to see the trees that they themselves planted. But they left these trees for me to benefit. And I'm going to plant trees so that my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren, please God, the future generations will be able to benefit from the legacy that I left behind. If each person says, I'm only going to plant what I need and not care about anybody else, that isn't going to be so fantastic, is it? And I think that that's like a muscle for life, to think to ourselves, we can't just think to ourselves, we're going to, like, I don't know, dig up all the natural resources and minerals in the earth. We have to leave things for other people. That's why we should be careful about like turning lights off to save energy and not running the water, so we shouldn't run out the water, etc., etc. I just think all these things are to do with the same idea of, is a tree a man, is a tree in a man, is a tree in a field? Is it? We have to think to ourselves, we are so closely connected to nature, and how we can't just think about ourselves here and now. We have to think of ourselves, think to ourselves what was there, what Hashem gave to us, and what Hashem told us to look after, and how we have to plant for the future. And the Maharal, in his book Tiferet Yisrael, speaks a lot about trees and seeds and things like that. And he says, and this is source 15, I'm just going to scroll it up for you. He says, the seed that is sown in the ground brings forth trees, fruits, leaves, and branches. The leaves and the fruit have a special form, which respond to the unique nature of the seed. So the seed's there in the ground, and it's got everything it needs inside it. I just think that's just so unbelievable. Even like when you think to yourself, you know, big shops always trying to like think of cool ways to do packaging, and then just think to yourself, an orange, it's biodegradable, but until the fruit, whilst the fruit's on the tree, and when it's taken off the tree, it's protected in its own natural shell. Or even banana, and it's so beautiful, the orange and the apple, and it's only when you bite into it that it starts rotting. It's just, if you think about it, it's just incredible. And he says that a seed is in the ground. And the Maharal says, just as the soul itself from above is righteous and pure, is placed in the human body in the world below, like a seed is placed underground, it is necessary for humans to bring out their potential, just as the seed brings out the potential from the soil in which it was sown. Its potential emerges corresponding to what is appropriate for that specific soul. So inside the seed, the DNA in inverted commas, is it going to be an oak tree? Is it going to be an apple tree? Everything they need inside is in that little seed. And I think to myself, a tree is so interesting because trees go through cycles. So we've got spring, where you've got the life coming out and it's starting and it's exciting. You've got the summer, the beautiful, majestic, lovely, the fruits are there, and the leaves are there. And then you've got the autumn, where things start slowing down. And then you've got the winter. And I think trees and people are quite similar in the sense that people can go through times of spring, summer, autumn, and winter stages of their lives. But when you are in the winter stage of your life and things seem difficult and all the leaves have fallen off and things are not going so well, you have to say to yourself, well, there is going to come a time of spring. There will be some sort of hope and salvation that will come to us. And I also think that trees grow, and I don't know if you've been to different parks, I know, for example, Highgate Woods, you can see there are twists and turns, there are branches, sometimes branches fall off, but then the tree carries on growing. Sometimes the tree has got like little twisted paths. Not everything goes so smoothly, and we have to think to ourselves, maybe a man is like the tree of a field in a way that we've got our seasons and things change and then they get better and they get worse, but there'll be a time when it gets better again. And there are times when the branches twist and it's not exactly how you expected it to be, like a tree that looks exactly like that. There are different parts of our journey. And I think to ourselves, I think to myself, when we say it in the morning, we say, Ehud Vorim She'odom Ochel Paraseim Ba'olam Hazeh V'Keren Kayemet L'Olam Haba, which is part of Gemara and Shabbos 127. We say these are the things that a man eats, the fruit in this world, and the real reward is in the world to come. We have this expression, fruits of labor. We also have your children or your payros, your children and your progeny, whatever you leave behind. And it doesn't have to be physical children, it could be spiritual children, people who you had an influence on, if you've taught them or you've shown some kindness, and some deed that you've done in the world is there living on after you. And I think that that is a lot of ideas that I wanted to share with you about trees, but I'm just going to leave number 16 out for the moment because we're running out of time today. Just give a bit of time, people want to ask questions. But I just want to tell you something that is like one of the most incredible quotes. It's a medrash from Ovesta Rabbi Nassan, and I just think this is mind-boggling when you think about it. It says, Im haisa netia b'soch yodoch. But if you have a sapling in your hand, vayomru lach, and someone comes along and they say to you, Hare lach hamashiach. Mashiach's here, come along, bo. Right? Mashiach's here. And you're holding a sapling in your hand. What are you supposed to do? According to Ovesta Rabbi Nassan. Bo unata es hanatia. Va'acha kach tse v'hakiblu. Low. First, finish your planting that tree and then go off and greet the Moshiach. Now, I'm hoping so much by the time we finish the class tonight that we will know that Moshiach's here and the soldiers will come home from the borders and the hostages will be returned and all the people who are ill will have a refuah shlema. But if that doesn't happen, in the meantime, whilst we're waiting for Mashiach, ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema b'vias HaMashiach, even though I believe he's coming right now, and I'm really hoping, told you I've always got to have a bag packed in case he comes with a new dress, obviously. But in the meantime, what we are supposed to do is remember that if we are going to plant a seed, whatever that seed is, if we're involved in planning a project towards the future, if we're involved in helping someone, doing something that's going to help them or help ourselves in the future, we should do that project, which is like mind-boggling because we should be like, quickly, I've got to go. But actually what we're supposed to do is carry on planting that tree, investing in ourselves, investing in other people, investing in the future of the community, of our ability to do mitzvahs and righteous deeds, to help other people, to do something to help ourselves and help other people, to invest in ourselves and invest in the future. And even if we find out Moshiach is coming right now, we've just got to do what we can to plant that tree. So I hope that's going to give you something when you go to Shul on Shabbos, if you go to Shul on Shabbos, and you hear Parsha Shoftim, and you hear this sentence about man. One second, man is a man and the tree of the field. I hope I've given you a lot of fruit for thought. I hope everybody has a wonderful Shabbos. And if I'm not in contact with you again between now and Rosh Hashanah, I hope you have a Shana Tova Umasuka. And we do have the minhag to dip apple and honey, which is an apple, which is a fruit from the tree, which has got lots of things to do with like breathing in Vayipach Hashem, and Hashem blew into man the breath of air and things like that. So lots and lots of things to think about. And if anybody's got any questions or comment, I'd love to hear it. And thank you again, Miss Fine, for bringing in the idea of Hashem is in the field, that the king's in the field.
So I'm just going to just quickly add here, and I'm just fighting with batteries in different places. I don't know what. Just give me 1 second, 1 second. Let me get this best. Okay, just being that I can't do my fascist color tonight because I didn't get you and I didn't have it prepared, but I want to just say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we're talking about our hostages and Klal Yisrael, really where we are. And one of the things that I brought with me today was an entire suitcase. And it says here on the suitcase, "We will dance again." And in the suitcase are sneakers that Nicki Minaj actually had made, and people can actually buy them, and all the proceeds go to help our hostage families and Nova survivors. And also people can actually sponsor them for families and for people to have. And you can see it says Am Yisrael Chai, and it's such an incredible thing. But I think that the importance of the whole thing is that there's nothing that's isolated, and we are all in this together. So whether it's going to be with our growing, our trees, our roots, and the beautiful thing about the tree is that the woman is really the internal of the tree. She's the part that you don't see as it's fed, and the roots. And without roots, a tree is not grounded. And that's why it's so important for us as women to ground ourselves and to keep ourselves strengthened and to internally strengthen ourselves, because ultimately it's going to be the Nashim Tzadkaniyot that are going to be bringing Mashiach. So with all these beautiful ideas and that we take with us, and I do think such a beautiful connection with our trees, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Sadeh, and that all we have to do is to ask to see him, to connect to him, and to just tell him that we really want to be better Jews. So I just think that was beautiful. Really, Chava, thank you so much. And to everybody there, we do hope to continue. And now we're on the next run until we get to Rosh Hashanah. And I'm sure that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is very proud of each and every one of us. So well done for being here. And if there's anybody else that wants to ask or to share, please feel free to now. Thank you, Chava, and a good Shabbos to you and to everybody else with us. And it's been an absolute pleasure, so thank you so much.
Shabbos, have a wonderful time in Shoresh, and if you see my
Thank you.
father-in-law.
I will. Thank you. Good Shabbos, everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Shabbat Shalom, thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos. Thank you, Chava.